What's good, guys? Welcome to my office. So my wife gave birth to our first child, our son, about a week and a half ago, and we did a ton of preparation. We read a lot of books, we watched a lot of YouTube videos, we've been following all of these different birth influencers on Instagram. We are saturated with information, but in spite of all of this, there are still some things that I was not told that I want to share with you guys in the hopes that it makes some of your laboring processes a little bit easier. This is specifically for the partners of expecting mothers. There's so much conflicting stuff out there about what you should expect or what your role is going to be. Do your research, come up with your birth plan, do everything else. This video does not have all of the information. It's just the supplemental shit. With that in mind, here are 5 things that I wish I had known prior to my wife going into labor. Not in any particular order. Let's kick it off. The first thing on my list is to take care of yourself. This sounds selfish, and it's gonna go kind of against your natural thinking. Your wife is in labor, she's going through all of this, why should you not suffer in some degree of solidarity with her? And while you're definitely going to be suffering in solidarity with her in one way or another, whether you like it or not, you shouldn't suffer needlessly. And the reason for this is because your wife is going to need you to fill in for what she cannot do. That means liaising with hospital staff when she's in too much pain to do so. That means helping her to make decisions with all of the pressure and all of the high stakes and, again, the pain. That means being emotionally supportive for her and telling her the things that you know that she needs to hear to get her through all of the difficult times that she's going to be going through over the course of her labor. And there are going to be a lot of those because labor is super painful and it can last a while. So in order for you to be able to offer her the best support possible, you need to be at your best. And this means not needlessly sacrificing stuff just to be in solidarity with your wife. I know it can feel weird to be eating a big fat meal in a room with your laboring wife who cannot eat because she's throwing up everything she tries to keep down, but ask yourself, is it better that one of you be extremely hungry and malnourished over the course of this process, or both of you be very malnourished over the course of this process? Because you're both on the same team and you're the only ones on that team. All the other hospital staff, they have their goals, but only you and your partner know what you want to get out of this birth, other than a healthy and happy child, of course. You need to be at your best to help make sure that happens because there are things she's not going to be able to do. If you need to have sanctioned nap times, do it. All of this should be discussed with your partner beforehand, of course. You should make sure that you're both comfortable with your plan and with your strategies and with the things that you're going to do to make sure that you are your best, but you should do those things. I'm going to say something controversial right now. If you smoke weed every day, it might be a good idea to bring a bowl and a little bit of weed to hit in the parking lot. And I know that this is kind of a counterintuitive thing to say because you may be thinking, well, I don't want to be stoned for the birth of my child. And I understand that. Ask yourself this. If you are a high functioning stoner who smokes weed quite a bit, and you are in this strange situation with all of these external stresses happening, all of these rapid fire decisions that you need to be making, you probably haven't slept a ton, you probably haven't eaten a ton, you are in a different environment without any of your comforts. Will a little bit of cannabis bring you closer to a mindset where you can give your wife the earnest support that she needs, or will the withdrawal from that take you further away? The answer to that question will vary for every single person. I'm not saying go smoke weed, but as a good example, I'm on trazodone for sleep, and I didn't take any because I didn't want to be very groggy when the child was born or be too groggy to support my wife overnight over the course of labor. Now, trazodone doesn't force you to sleep, but if you stay up through it, it just leaves your head a little bit fuzzy. So I didn't do it. And I wound up having some withdrawal symptoms from trazodone, which added to my already long list of things that were causing me distress at the time. And my wife, whose labor lasted over 40 hours, didn't notice that I was in such distress, which is an absolute blessing. But I was having an extremely difficult time managing my own anxiety, managing my own physical symptoms of anxiety, because my stomach gets all fucked up when I'm anxious. I threw up like 8 times over the course of my wife's labor. She didn't know, thank goodness, but I did. You don't want to need to be managing yourself and managing your own anxiety and managing your own discomfort while you are trying to be earnestly there for your wife, because every amount of energy that you need to spend on yourself, on managing yourself, is energy that you can't spend supporting her. Communicate these things with her in advance. If she's strongly opposed to you taking naps, if she's strongly opposed to you doing whatever small things that you need because it may seem selfish, have a conversation about it. Explain that in order to support her as best as you can, you need to be as close to regular as you can be. And if this is a deal breaker and it's not going to work out, then don't do it. These are just things that you should be open to, that you should try to discuss before going into labor. I'm not saying go light up a fat joint and get ripped so that you can be happy while your wife is pushing. That is not what what I'm saying at all. Just make sure that you meet your needs and prioritize your physical needs, and making sure that you are as sorted as you can be, because if you're not all there, it's going to come out in the level of support and the sincerity of that support that you can offer your wife. That leads to the second thing on the list, which is your wife will be in extreme distress and it will be beyond your control. And this is something that is kind of said in all of the literature, but it's something that I never understood until I was there. Think about the fact that you may have a reaction to your wife being in this level of pain. When I pictured myself and my wife in labor, I thought she was going to be there pushing and I was going to be just like over the moon with joy because my baby was on the way and nothing was going to get in the way of that. But that wasn't the case. My wife was in extreme distress and I felt such terrible sympathy pain for her. Every contraction that she would go into, my stomach would go into knots of anxiety. And maybe there isn't anything that could have been done to prevent that, but I think being a little bit more prepared would have helped me get through it. Because at the end of the day, I had no idea the level of distress that it would cause her. I had never seen her in that amount of pain, and I was the only and best person who could give her the support that she needed. Because in reality, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing that anyone can do. I mean, they can have an epidural, of course, which is great, but in the early stages of labor, they probably won't be on an epidural, and some people want to go unmedicated. My wife did, and whichever you want to do is 100% fine, but they're going to be, regardless of whether they are medicated, unmedicated, what the plan is and what winds up happening, you're going to see your wife in a state that you've never seen her before. Pain notwithstanding, in a state that you've never seen before. Prepare for that. It can be quite a lot. And if you think that you're going to be able to handle it and that it's not a big deal at all, that's great. I thought that way, but I was extremely incorrect. Third one, sleep as much as you can in early labor. My wife went into labor on a Wednesday. She started getting contractions in the middle of the afternoon on a Wednesday. And by Wednesday evening, we had decided that she was definitely in labor. And on Wednesday night, I cleaned the house for hours and hours in preparation for my sister and her boyfriend coming to watch our dog, and in preparation for visitors that we would get after the fact. And because I wanted to come back from the hospital to a clean house. And after I cleaned the house for hours and hours, I went to bed. And I was so excited about labor that I tossed and I turned, and I was thinking about the boy and about everything that was going to happen. And I did not sleep at all on Wednesday night. And then Thursday, we went into the hospital and we were in labor all night on Thursday night. And by the end of Thursday night, by Friday morning, my wife was pushing and neither of us had really slept in 2 days. And if I could go back, I would have not cleaned a thing. I would have doubled up on trazodone and I would have gone to sleep. You're going to want to be up. You're going to feel so excited and you're going to feel like you need to be there for your wife. And if she wants you to be, you should. But you should also have a discussion about the fact that the less sleep you get early on, the more fatigued and less able to support her you're going to be later on. And the contractions are going to increase in pain. They're going to increase in frequency. And the level of support that she needs from you is only going to grow over the course of the labor period. Get your sleep early on so that you can be energized and rested later on. Nothing is going to happen that you will regret missing. Also, your wife can wake you up. The fourth one, super important. Communicate with your family and friends, anyone who might be getting updates, what cadence they should expect updates, and what silence means. Because one person's no news is good news could be another person's very bad day. And this wound up happening to us. My wife's parents expected more frequent updates than we were prepared to give. Our expectation was that we were not going to tell anyone anything. We would tell them when we were going to the hospital, and then we would tell them when the baby was born. Our labor lasted over 40 hours, and we didn't provide too many updates. And by the end of that period, both of my wife's parents were very concerned that something had gone wrong. And interestingly, when they met up with my aunt outside the hospital, she said, "Why are you worried? He would tell us if something went wrong." And this just goes to show, different people have different ideas of what a lack of update means. My wife and I didn't want to have a conversation with everyone beforehand because we just felt like we wanted to go at it alone, deal with all of the difficulties, and then invite them to celebrate with us. But invariably, they wound up knowing we were in the hospital, and they wound up upset and worried because we weren't updating them. It would have been much easier to just have the conversation with them beforehand, even if they were a little bit disappointed in the fact that we wouldn't be providing them regular updates, than to surprise them with a lack of regular updates, because then they make assumptions and then people get worried, and it's just not necessary. And in hindsight, I wish that my wife's parents had not been super upset and worried for the bulk of our labor. I wish that they had known that everything was okay. The last thing on the list, something that no one told me, and that I wish I had known, Labor can take a long time, and not only can it take a long time, there is notice before most of the important parts. Now, I have heard stories of women just like going into the hospital and squeezing a kid out like no problem, and it takes a half hour end to end, or like babies coming unexpectedly. But in the vast majority of cases, this does not happen. As a good example, the hospital staff, there's a number of people that are required to be in the delivery room when the baby is born. Your wife will be pushing and pushing, and all of this stuff will be happening, and they're not going to call all of those people in until like the last second. And you'll be wondering, like, aren't we pushing? Isn't all of this stuff happening? You may feel like it, but the baby's not really that close yet. Everyone else in the room knows it. You don't know it because you've never had a kid before and you're not a medical expert, and everything seems so crazy and exciting, but there is time. And the reason that I say this is because you shouldn't put off all of the small little tasks that you might need to do over the course of your wife being in labor because you're afraid of missing something. I did this, and I wound up having a laundry list of stuff to do once the baby was born, and time was moving so much more quickly then. They were moving us out of the delivery room and into postpartum, and I had to bring things from the delivery room to postpartum, from the delivery room to the car, from the car to postpartum. There was a lot of moving around of things, and I don't remember doing any of it. I don't know how I did it. And in hindsight, I didn't really do it that well because the nurses actually wound up having to send a bunch of stuff that I forgot from the delivery room to postpartum. I still am sure that I lost a number of possessions while all of these things were moving around. And while all of this was happening, my wife had our new son in her arms, and they were kind of pushing her around, and I kind of wished that I could have been next to her while all of that was happening. But instead, I was running around with all of these bags trying to make sure that I didn't miss anything, and in this fatigued, frenzied, lunatic state that I was in. Do not leave your tasks for the last second. You can totally take your 10 minutes during labor to bring things to the car, to get what you need from the car, to text people, to do all of the things. You've got time to do it. And if you follow the other steps that are in this list, you'll have energy to do it too. So that's it. That's the video. I'm happy with this because I feel like if I had seen myself yelling these things at me before labor, everything would have gone a little smoother. Having said that, our labor went wonderfully. It was painful. It was traumatic for everybody. It lasted over 40 hours, but we got a beautiful son out of it. And genuinely, all of the bad parts, all of the painful memories will immediately start to fade into the past. But what won't fade is the love that you have for your child. It was a really amazing time and an amazing day. We're going to do it again, but we're going to be a little bit better prepared next time. I hope this video helps some people. If you like it, feel free to tell me you like it, leave a comment, whatever. Yeah, thank you.